Hey everyone, it's Logan here. A fair bit has happened since last we talked, so I figured I'd go over some of the updates that have happened. I've got some stickers on here. Basically what I did is I got some laser printer stickers. I put them on the underside of these acrylic pieces, and now they're about to light up. I'll show you that here in just a second. I've got some switches mounted, got some coils made. A little bit of work still going on there. I did the final milling that I have to do with these, so these are going to be glued on back real soon. I've got the lights all mounted, and got some more relays done. I've also had some folks asking for wiring diagrams, so I'm going to get into this confusing mess here in a minute. But first I figure I'd show you what's going on here. So I've mounted these switches right here. These are just standard micro switches. When you click one of those, the lights go on. And I've just got some bolts here with just some rubber caps on them. I'm not sure how well that's going to hold up, but that's for now. And these are going to stop the switch from going too far back. So we've got that. And no, let's see. Can I get it? Nope. There we go. That triggered. So that's coming along pretty awesome. And right here, okay. So we've got the first light is obviously always on. So now let's say, okay, the ball goes around. Now you lose the ball. This switch is going to be sitting right up in here as soon as I get that mounted. And as soon as you trigger that switch, what's happening here is we have a bunch of wires going through diodes, and it's going to successively trigger all these. And these are some time delay relays. So what's going to happen is it's going to trigger one, and then it's going to wait some small amount of time, and then allow the next one to be triggered. And they're all wired in series, so you have to trigger one before the other and wait some amount of time before you can trigger the next one. So if I trigger the first one, okay, so the ball comes back around, you lose the ball, comes down here, triggers this switch, that light comes on. As soon as that happens, number 2 comes on, and then after some amount of time, this one comes on. Now we trigger the next one, and then wait some small amount of time, and that one comes on. And then we can do it again. Okay, now we're on the 4th ball, and now we're on the 5th ball. Now the one thing I don't have finished yet, this one is, I need one more diode here, one more wire. That's going to trigger this one, and that's going to send power over there, which is going to shut off the switched 12 volt power. And at that point, these will no longer function until you do the reset. However, I don't have that yet, simply because I ran out of diodes. So I just got in more diodes here. There we go. I couldn't do that one-handed, but yep, got more diodes here. So now I'm going to make one final wire there. And I've already tested this circuit. In fact, if I take a jumper wire, and by the way, I should just say how supportive the wife is being of this incredible mess. Look at all this nonsense around here. Yeah, she had this awesome idea for the theme. I mean, look how good that's turning out. And she's letting me just take over the house with this, but hopefully done sooner than later. Let me just grab that jumper real quick here. And I'm going to have to put the camera down here for a second, but all I really have to do is jump 12 volts to here, because that's what this camera, or this, not camera, this switch gets. This gets 12 volts. So when it sends 12 volts here, that's going to jump that one. And I don't think I can do this one-handed. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so all I did was I just touched the 12 volt positive to there, and now that light shut off, so it's no longer allowing 12 volt power to get to the switched power, hence the switch. And if you notice, the reset light came on. And now as soon as I press this, see all the lights are off here. As soon as I press this light's going to go back off. And so right now, that no longer works. So now as soon as I press this, everything's going to come back on. There we go. And now we're ready to play again. So pretty neat. Now for these right here, I have to step over here because I don't have these ones mounted yet, but they're sitting on the ground here, so I can trigger that one, that one, that one, that one. And the order doesn't really matter, but I haven't quite figured out exactly what order I'm going to do this all in. Now over here, if I trigger these, now if you look down here, every time I trigger that, okay, what I was saying before I was interrupted, so every time I trigger one of these, I get a light coming on. And when you trigger the last one, you get the remaining 1,000 points and the last 100 points as well. For some reason, this switch, I think something might be going on here. I gotta test this because when I trigger this, I'm not getting the extra 100 points. But if you notice how everything's shut off, right there. So, might be something else to do there, but it's all, for the most part, it's all working there. A little bit of tweaking there. And I'm settling on 24 volt coils. In the last video, you saw a little bit of sparking inside that switch with that coil, and I knew that was happening. And I want to say right at the beginning that I know that's bad. I just thought it was a really cool look. But I've dropped it down to 24 volts. Now, 24 volts isn't quite as powerful to activate this, but I'm hoping that it may not matter. And another problem here is that this isn't quite aligned properly. I'm end up like holding this down, so I think I'm going to have to put something in here just to keep it apart because it's not aligning properly. But if I trigger this here, now one of these is going to be attached to this up here once I get that top of the pop bumper there, and the bottom one's going to be down here. So when the ball comes in, it's going to make contact between here and here. And no, for anyone thinking right away, yes, I know that is not how normal pop bumpers work. There's just a sensor down here. But I'm going to try it. I think that might work pretty well because here I can trigger this. It triggers pretty darn fast. Pretty strong. And I've got 3 coils, 3 springs wrapped around there, and that just seems to work pretty well. And I'll tell you what, there's quite a bit of a magnetic field there. When I do this, I mean, you saw how it sucked it in there. It is pretty darn strong, I'll tell you what. Of course, doing this one-handed again, not easy. All right, there we go. So, there, I mean, you saw how much it pulled in. That's quite powerful. So I think it's going to be good enough. The problem is just, is it going to trigger fast enough? That's my only question at this point. But I've also got 2 other specials here. So if I trigger that, there's 3. And then if I trigger the other one here, there's the other ones. They're all working. And so also looking at this here, I don't really want these rubber bands to stay, but I'll tell you what, when I had all 4 of these rubber bands on top of each other, the ball was bouncing up. And obviously I don't want it bouncing up because it would hit the glass. And then when that was when they were all down here. When I moved them all up here, it would come in here, it would separate, it would snap itself inside there. But this seems to work pretty well. 3 on top, keeping it bouncing down, and then 1 on the bottom just so it's not constantly running through there. I mean, it actually works kind of well. And then I'm thinking of having, something in here to trigger points. I think I'm going to just Dremel that out on the workbench there. Oh, by the way, all these are mounted. And every time I trigger one, I get points. Apparently one of the wires fell off that one. That would make sense. But that one works, that one works, that one works. They're all mounted. And so what I did was I made these little brackets to hold them on. So the limit switches are going to be sitting here. I drill a hole on the side of here. It just mounts it up to the top. And then I just bend that at the angle I want. I think I'm gonna have to bend those down a little bit. And then this one here is for these switches. So that switch sits vertically. I gotta make one more over there. And then the ball save, I'm experimenting here. I might just Dremel in another, there we go. Sorry about that. I may just Dremel in another switch hole, but I'm looking at a way to make a spinner door, and I know that's not how they normally work. I don't want it to fully spin. Still thinking about that one. Get back to you with that. But I'm just going to set this up here for anyone who wants to look at it. So basically what I'm doing is I've got two different sets of 12 volt. I've got 12 volt continuous, 12 volt switched, and the continuous is going daisy chaining through several things. It's going through the common of the switch and out through normally closed, going into one of these relays, triggering this relay. And it's also coming down through here, bouncing through said relay, over through the lives relay, and then bouncing around to trigger, keep this lives relay triggered, and bouncing over there, and then also coming down here to one of the lights. And so what'll happen is once I get through all of these, it ends up triggering this first relay. That turns that from normally closed to normally open. That shuts off this relay, and it keeps itself shut off. And therefore, I lose all switched power, which is all my flippers and my pop bumpers and everything else go through 12 volt switched, or rather the relays for the pop bumpers go through 12 volt switched. So that they're going to shut off, and you basically no longer can operate anything until you hit the reset switch. Up here, when you hit the reset switch, it ends up releasing this. Power gets removed from here. It no longer keeps itself on, and everything goes back to the way it was. So it's basically just that simple. Something keeps itself on. When you remove it, it can no longer keep itself on, and everything resets. But if you want to study this chart, I know it's a little bit confusing here, but effectively I'm daisy chaining down here. So I've got 12 volts and 0 volts daisy chaining through things. And when the switch is pressed, the ball over switch, which is getting switched power. So the switch, that will no longer work, by the way. That switch will stop working once 12 volt switch goes away. And then through the diodes, basically it comes up here and it'll trigger one, and it triggers one through one of these relays. The first one obviously triggers right away, but the rest of them, the next one's going to trigger through here. So all of these get power at the same time. But because it goes through this, it depends on whether or not this time delay relay is actually active. So when you trigger it, it tries to trigger all these, but it can only trigger whatever one is the next one. So if this one is not active yet, it'll end up triggering it. Triggers this one. Then after a delay, the next press will trigger the next one, and so on and so forth down the line. Relatively simple. And then life 1 is getting continuous power. Sorry, not continuous. That's actually, I think, switched power. But that's getting power effectively all the time until the switch gets pressed. And all they're doing is they're sharing a common, a 0 volt, which is going through this lives light's power. So once all the balls have been triggered, all 5 of them, this ends up getting triggered back to this up here. This triggers. Once that triggers, it goes from normally closed to normally open, and all of this power, the 0 volts goes away. So they're getting 12 volts, but then they're not getting 0 volts, and they can no longer keep themselves on. And the positives are coming from these relays, which, again, like I said, end up keeping themselves on. So these lights end up keeping themselves on. So relatively simple, but if you want to take a look at that, there's my basic super messy diagram. Well, I hope you like this. It's coming along pretty well. I've got some pieces painted, or rather not painted, but primed. They're getting ready to be painted. And obviously there's a few more things to do. Got to mount these switches, got to get a few more of these things made up. Got to figure out where to mount the other one. Might be over there. I haven't quite figured that one out. I've made 2 coils so far, so I got to make the rest of the coils. That's just so cool. I got to make sure they're aligned properly. And then I got to paint all this and get it all mounted up. And I still have to do the ball save circuit, and I still have to do that circuit. Well, I guess that's going to be related to the ball save. And obviously a couple things like getting points there. Other than that, yeah, I think it's coming along pretty nice. If you do have any questions or comments, let me know. Get subscribed if you want to see the rest of it. And other than that, have a great day. Okay, by the way, I did figure out what was going on, why the 10 points weren't triggering. I had a jumper loose on this 0-volt terminal here. So now, if I trigger this right here, I get 10 points each time. If I do a reset, then normally I'm getting 1 point each time I trigger it. And also, the next 7-segment display came in. So that one that's obviously messed up, I just have to get this thing resoldered, and we'll be good to go on that. So yeah, thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and have a great day.